Hello there. Many thanks for joining us from wherever you are. 100 billion cities coronavirus revitalization of enterprises program dubbed Obatampa Fund. Free water for 3 months, free electricity for 6 more months, and reduction of communication service tax. We have more from the budget review we just ended as Finance Minister calls for continuity in leadership, and the minority describes the review as promises of a manifesto than a media review. Also coming up, 2 students die in schools less than a month after schools reopen for final year students to wrap up their exit exams. And President Akufo-Addo stops ministerial directive by Communications Minister for GBC to shut down 3 of its 6 channels to make space on the DTT platform. With details of that plus analysis of the just ended budget review, Winston Amma will be joining me, my colleague Joseph Opoku Gakpo, and of course our team, George Rafi included, are on the ground. We'll be linking up to them. We're on DSTV 41, GoTV 144. Remember, we're free on your digital television. You can also get us on our social media platforms, and we are streaming live on YouTube. My name is Gifty Andopia. This is The Pulse. Please be my guest. You're welcome to the show. I'll take you through the details and more. Now, the government has announced another ambitious plan to help transform the country following the COVID-19 pandemic that has affected the economy. The Minister for Finance announced that the government will soon launch a 100 billion cedi initiative known as the COVID-19 Alleviation and Revitalization of Enterprises Support Scheme to help the country recover from the economic shocks brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. The 42-month scheme, christened Ghana Cares Obatampa, is to transform the economy towards a massive socio-economic development post-coronavirus.
Mr. Speaker, the virus has laid bare our vulnerabilities as a world, as nations, as households, and as individuals. As at yesterday, Wednesday, 22nd July 2020, 622,725 persons had sadly succumbed to this virus, and 50,240,290 had been infected across the world. Mr. Speaker, even before we fully grasp the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak, our immediate concerns were on protecting lives and preserving livelihoods of our people. The President moved swiftly with a 100 million preparedness plan, which was prescient and laid the foundation to implement measures to save lives and safeguard economic activities by improving citizens' access to essential public services and helping businesses weather the downturn. Mr. Speaker, thus far, the health consequences of the COVID-19 outbreak in Ghana has not been as devastating as in other countries. Sadly, as of yesterday, 22nd July 2020, 153 Ghanaians had succumbed to the virus. May their souls, Mr. Speaker, rest in peace. We have since March recorded 29,672 cases with 26,090 recoveries, which puts the number of active cases at 3,429. This has largely been due to the fact that government has shown a leadership of conviction that has been decisive, swift, innovative, compassionate in the management of the crisis, and also because our health professionals nationwide have been heroic in handling the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, the pandemic has also brought to the fore the structural gaps in our health delivery system. That is why, with urgency, we have already begun to mount an effective, coordinated, and sustainable long-term response to the health needs of the people. Under the Agenda 111, previously Agenda 88 initiative of His Excellency the President for Hospitals, we will design, build, equip, and staff new hospitals in every district without one, and a new regional hospital in every region with none. This demonstrates government's commitment to protect the lives of Ghanaians. The President has declared that all the district hospitals will be designed and built by Ghanaians, built companies, and will lay the foundation for the launch of the nationwide housing program, God willing, in his second term. Mr. Speaker, these will all be designed by Ghanaians and built by Ghanaian companies. And these construction companies will then have the solid foundation for the launch of also a nationwide housing program, God willing, in the President's second term. Mr. Speaker, we must not and will not be daunted by this extraordinary crisis. Government will continue to do what it has to do to protect lives and support livelihoods through compassionate, competent, and courageous leadership. We have accepted that this pandemic and its effects are unparalleled in the annals of our country and indeed globally. We have accepted that until a vaccine is found, we have no choice but to rearrange our lifestyle in order to protect lives and promote livelihoods. It requires a marshalling of unprecedented resources to contend with the pandemic and its effects on Ghanaians. And Mr. Speaker, this government is up to this task. Mr. Speaker, the predicted long-lasting effect of this pandemic amid systemic shifts and uncertainties suggests 2020 and beyond will be very challenging. Ghana will therefore need a continuity of courageous, compassionate, and competent government with a well-crafted Ghana will therefore need the continuity of courageous, compassionate, and competent government with a well-crafted program to protect the lives of Ghanaians, safeguard jobs, and support businesses to sustain operations during this period, and especially in the 4 years ahead. This can only be possible with competent economic management of the economy, and we being at the helm. Mr. Speaker, we have proven over and over again that we are better managers of the economy. Together, we took Ghana out of havoc and placed it amongst lower middle-income countries within a decade. Together, we recovered and revitalized a critically weakened economy, and today, we can now attract renowned global automobile companies in just 3 years of returning into office.
You can trust us here on this platform to give you the breakdown as it goes and have the discussions that will be thought-provoking, that will lead you to making informed decisions. But of course, like I said, we'll be going on the ground to get some reactions. You've seen what the minority has to say. You didn't expect anything less. I have here in studio my colleague Winston Amwa, who is deputy head of our political desk. We look at what was said today in view of the challenges, in view of the opportunities that these challenges present, and look at the way forward. Winston, it's good to have you. Good afternoon to you. I think that everybody will be talking about the electricity and the water bill, you know, the rebates in electricity and water bill payments going forward. But I'm wondering what jumped at you. What are the highlights of this review for you?
Well, good afternoon, Gifted. Well, it's you know, exciting that you have those who are lifeline customers when it comes to electricity being given free electricity for 6 months. For me, that's very important. Water. Okay,
Winston, I need to interrupt you briefly. I beg your pardon. Hold it for me. I'll come back with the same question so we get the answers. But Ato Forson, Kesa Ato Forson speaks for the minority on finance. He's also a former deputy finance minister. He's speaking, addressing the media right now. Let's hear him out.
What we have here, the media review document, is not for manifestos. It's for him to review the existing budget, not for him to come and read to us a new budget. But what we are seeing, he's not only reading a new budget, but what he has done indeed means that he has actually introduced manifesto promises into the official document. I'm surprised, and I'm actually urging the ordinary Ghanaian to be mindful that this media review brings about nothing. In fact, I heard him also talk about the fact that they are intending to reduce the communication service tax from 9% to 5%. But the question is, who increased it in the first place? It's the same administration. And let us also be mindful that His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama has said that from January 2021, this tax will be abolished. So all what they intend doing is to come here and tell all of us that they are trying to abolish it. In fact, there's nothing in this document for us to be proud of. And we in the minority wish to serve notice that from Monday, we are ready to debate this and subject it to the scrutiny that it deserves, because it has nothing, but rather it has brought, or is going to bring to ordinary Ghanaian some pain and hardship, because there's nothing in this budget that will alleviate our suffering. This is a failing government, a government that has already failed, and we are all aware of that. And let no one be deceived that this budget is going to bring us the hope. It is clear that this administration has spent 11.1 billion Ghana cedis on coronavirus without accounting for it. It is also clear that they have increased the public debt as at 30th of June 2020 from 120 billion to 255 billion. And they are going to spend additional 30 billion, borrow additional 30 billion to increase the public debt to approximately 280 billion. Clearly, they have failed. The year of roads has turned into a year of borrowing and showing nothing. So I will end here, and I have my colleagues here. They will also try and speak a bit to the matter whilst we wait for Monday and we'll come for the debate. You have to. No, sanitize the spirit.
Ladies and gentlemen, when you put the finances of your country in the hands of people who are clever thieves, that is what you see today. I feel very, very, very sad as a Ghanaian sitting there and listening to the minister, and with my trained professional eyes, seeing the attempt to plunder away and steal our national resources and finding a way to cover for it. First, I want those of you who have this document, when you get it, to go to paragraph 444. Paragraph 444 of this document. And you will find, that is page, I think, 59. You will find request for approval of supplementary estimates. And I want to assure you, whatever you see in this paragraph is the exact amount they are spending in 2020 and not the 97 billion. And listen to me very carefully. He says, Mr. Speaker, the revisions made in the 2020 fiscal framework have resulted in an increase in the 2020 appropriation of 98 billion that was approved by the August House in December 2019. Mr. Speaker, the aim of this supplementary estimate is to seek parliamentary approval to commit additional resources amounting to 11.8 billion as outlined in the media review to fund additional expenditure resulting from the revisions made to the 2020 budget, consistent with Article 1798 of the 1992 Constitution. And this is the most interesting part. This will bring the revised 2020 appropriation to 109 billion 933,169,929. So clearly they are spending 109 billion and not what? And not 97 billion. And I want to show you how this clever accountant who knows how to hide stealing has been able to cook the 97 billion for you. Again, just take your time. Let me go to one of the appendices and show to you how he did that. Ladies and gentlemen, If you look at, I think if you look at page 108, there is an appendix 3A, and this is the appendix. I want you to take your time and study that appendix. That appendix shows us how we are going to finance the deficit. Are you understand what I'm saying? It is showing us how we are going to finance the deficit. And in that appendix, the minister says that he is using project loans of about 4.9 billion, plus an additional program loans, that is, if you take the IMF money, if you take the World Bank money, if you take the African Development Bank money, and you put all of that together, he will spend about 8.2 billion. Now he says that the sovereign bonds, and I want you to refer your mind back to when Parliament approved the 3 billion euro bond. The 3 billion euro bond that was approved, it was quite clear that $2 billion of that money will be spent on what? On the budget, to finance the deficit. If you look at his own calculation of the numbers, that already gives you about 12 billion. So if you add the 12 billion to his 8 billion to his 4 billion, we are getting around 24 billion to be financed from external sources. The minister then says that domestically he will borrow another 32 billion to finance the same budget. So if you add the 32 billion to 24 billion, what do you get? You get about 56 billion and not 44 billion. So when you add the 56 billion to the clever accountant's own total revenue of 53 billion, you are getting very close to the figure of 109 billion in the text of the report. So it means that after he did this and he came to the tables, he realized that the figure will give us a deficit of 15.6%. So he started massaging the figures from the table and forgot to go back and edit the original figure. And the paragraph 444, he forgot to go back and edit it. So when you put all of that together, what you realize is that 53 billion of revenue plus almost 56 billion of financing of the deficit gives us about 109 billion. And that is the figure he has reported in paragraph 444. Can you now see when they come dressed in white and quoting the Bible what they do with the figures? When I call them Piccadilly, you don't understand. These are clever accountants who know how to steal your money. So in total, about 12 billion of the money that they want to spend, they have suppressed the expenditure from the budget. So you don't see the expenditure. So in actual fact, the deficit that they are estimating for 2020 is 15.6% of GDP and not 11.8% of GDP. Take this from me, and I throw this challenge to anybody in government to face me on these numbers. Again, I want you to recall that the same page. How on earth can somebody raise revenue of 53 billion and borrow 56 billion? I have never seen it before in my life. That the amount of money you borrow to finance the budget is more than your own revenue that you use to finance the budget. Have you ever seen it before? That you have a revenue, you go and borrow more than the revenue to finance the budget. It's equivalent to just stealing and borrowing and taking the money away. Now the next thing is, if you are spending 56 billion, where is the money going? A very critical question of where is the money going. I thought that the money would have possibly gone into financing what he called, his phantom hospitals. So immediately I saw it, I thought that we were going to finance a lot of hospitals today. Now he tells us in his supplementary estimates that he's spending only 600 million Ghana cedis on hospitals. 600 million out of 56 billion borrowed. Only 600 million is going into hospital projects. So Nanado Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Ken Ofori-Atta and your family, what is our crime? That you would borrow and spend 56 billion and you are struggling to hide it from the people of Ghana. And the hospitals now, they are 111, and you are now going to spend 600 million. Are you going to build chicken coops for us? Hen coops. The one he's building in Kofodia is 70-something million euros. Is that not it? How much is 70 million euros for one hospital? That's about almost 250 or 200 million cedis. So it means that the 600 million can only build 3 hospitals if they can even build all of them in 1 year and pay for them. So where is the money going? I beg the people of Ghana, they are going to steal 56 billion of our money before they exit office. And if you don't get them out in 2021, they will complete and collapse this country before they exit anytime soon. So let's make sure that this does not happen to the people of Ghana. Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, I also found something very, very interesting. The minister, when he was trying to list the things that he will be spending the supplementary appropriation on, you say you are coming for supplementary appropriation of 11.8 billion. And you can't even tell us what you are going to use the money for. Look at the things he mentions here. He says, COVID-19 preparedness plan, 1.34 billion. He says health infrastructure, agenda 11, 600 million. He says allowance of 50% for basic salary of frontline workers, 80 million. He says sanitation, market fumigation, 50 million. He says support to household, food packages, the food that you ate, 44 million. He says that he will spend relief for payment of water bills, 500 million. Then relief for payment of electricity, 1.1 billion. Now he says that he will give loans to micro, small, about 129. The total amount of money out of the 11.8 billion he is able to account for in this document amounts to only 5.3 billion. Not even half of the money he wants. So how on earth can you be coming for supplementary budget of 11.8 billion? And you don't know what you are going to use it for. Now he's going to sleep over it. Think about the lie he will come and tell the finance committee and then get 11.8 billion. But as at the time he was coming here today, he only has expenditure to the tune of 5.3 billion, and the minister is asking for 11.8 billion. Ghana is in very, very dangerous times. And I want to urge the people of Ghana, come December 2020, to put an end to this collaborative stealing of our public funds, the cooking of financial data to hide the true state of our affairs, and to warn His Excellency John Dramani Mahama that 2021 is not going to be a tea party. It is going to be the beginning of the hard task of restoring the financial stability and the financial health of our country. And for the people of Ghana to know the true state. No wonder they want Domlebo out, because Domlebo will not allow this nonsense to happen. And we in the NDC are willing and ready to fight them till the end. And I want you, the press, to get access to this document and go through all that I have shown you. And you will notice that when the minister was accounting for the half year, that is January to June, he showed that the total amount of Eurobond money was 17.560, which is the 3 billion. He showed that he had spent about 5.2 billion, which is the 1 billion for amortization, which we approved. So actually that shows that he had already spent close to 12 billion on the budget. Now the minister comes to give us account for 2020, and the 12 billion you have already spent now reduces to 2 billion. When you spend money, do you get it back? Do you get it back? So that is the most clever accountant that I have ever seen in my entire life. And these are the kind of people who collapse the financial sector of the world. And we will not allow them to collapse the financial sector of this country. The Piccadillys must live with their white shirts and their unacceptable quote of the Bible when they do very nasty things in the dark. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Those are live visuals coming to you from Parliament, where we're standing by with our team to bring you more on it. I'm here with Winston Amwa, who is my colleague, deputy head of our political desk. And you heard Mr. Adongo there speaking about the request for approval that's been put in by the finance minister. Essentially, he says that less than half of the money being requested for by the minister is more than half is not accounted for. Essentially, he says the minister is requesting for 11.8 billion, but 5.3 billion of that amount is the only part that the minister is accounting for in this review that he just presented. Winston, let me take you back to the highlight for you from this review.
Exactly. So, I mean, I was talking about the provision of free electricity for 6 months for lifeline consumers. It's okay, water for 3 months. Not a bad one, but also for me, let me just let you break it down, the lifeline consumers, so that we all get it right. So lifeline consumers, those who consume between 1 to 50 units of electricity. Okay. So those are the lifeline consumers.
So if you're home, don't be in a hurry to feel like you're, you need to figure out if you're part of the lifeline consumers.
And the lifeline is actually about 1 to 18 Ghana cedis. Okay. If you consume more than that, you'd have to pay. So practically
speaking, what are the things you can be using on this sort of electricity? So like a television, fridge, radio?
I wouldn't be able to give you exact things that you could use.
I think the last time President Kufuor announced it, I think there was a breakdown by the electricity company.
Yes, they talk about how you could use 1 unit of electricity for your TV, some number of bulbs for more than 3 or 4 hours. I do not have the exact
So you certainly won't be using your, I mean, if you're using an air conditioner, I think you're not a part of the lifeline
Not at all.
consumers.
I mean, you're certainly not part of the lifeline consumers. Water is also good. But for me, what stands out is the 100 billion Ghana Care Program, the Obatampa. And I'd like to see the details of that because it's talked about it being a 3.5-year program. The most important issue, Gift, is that we find ourselves in a period where we need to progress as a country. Yes, we're going to be having some form of a stagnation. We're reviewing our growth rate from about 6.8% to less than 1%. That tells you that the economy will be growing the worst in over 30 years. The World Bank has projected a lot of African economies would see negative growth. And so if we have 1%, maybe you would say we'll be doing better than what many African countries would do. But under the circumstances, you'd expect that we need to spend out of the problems that we find ourselves in currently. How do we do that? We have to invest in productive sectors of the economy. We've always had issues with how the Ghanaian economy grows. Well, he's talked about having to invest in agriculture and some other productive sectors. He's also indicated that the most important aspect of every policy is its implementation. And so in the coming weeks when the president launches this program, we will get to know the details of it. And once we get to know the details of it, we'll be able to interrogate it and find out how it is going to help solve the problems. I'm also excited about the insurance bit, the help to those who become unemployed as a result of COVID-19.
You know, this morning on the Super Morning Show, in your conversation with the head officer, it was one of his suggestions that we should have an insurance policy for people who will be losing or who have lost their jobs as a result of coronavirus. So, Winston, I just wanted to chip that in so that you can move on.
Exactly. I mean, it's good, but the thing is that it's something we have never done. So now government is starting this. But these are things that should be done by insurance companies. And Ghanaians should also learn to sometimes, protect themselves against some of these shocks. But having said that,
I mean, you can't protect yourself from a pandemic because you certainly don't know it's going to come.
Without mentioning entities, there are entities that run insurance schemes that says, should you lose your job, you'll be taken care of for a year or two. More people should be signing on to these schemes. It would help them. But it's good that we find ourselves in this situation. But the challenge in all of this for me is that this is government spendings. And normally you would expect that when we spend, we will get returns, which will trigger growth. But many of these are going into consumption. And one of the things that government, the current government, then in opposition, always complain about is that you do not, borrow and spend on consumption and expect to develop or grow.
But that's what we're having to do because of coronavirus.
Exactly.
And that's the complaint that the minority there are making, that we're borrowing, like we owe, and we're still borrowing more.
Exactly. Exactly. But the challenge then is that we're faced with COVID-19. And when it comes to COVID-19, many people, we've seen the US, we've seen the UK, all giving stimulus packages to persons who have actually lost their jobs. And so if, for instance, you give me 1,000 or 2,000 Ghana cedis to invest in my business, and I invest in my business, for instance, it will take a bit of a time for me to actually make returns. I still would have to pay my workers. If I can't pay them, that becomes the challenge. And that's why we're talking this morning about, for instance, the reduction in SNIT contributions, which could also be as a result of default in payment of those contributions, and not necessarily because of job losses. So while it is good, for instance, government has deferred the filing of taxes to June, which could bring about some savings, and also the primary balances to ensure that the banks are able to give more loans. Banks, yes, have reduced interest rates by some 2 percentage points and all of that, but the real issue is consumption. The good thing about consumption, Gifty, individual consumption, you and I, our consumptions actually drive the economy.
The economy, exactly.
And so if we don't have liquidity, if we do not have money within the system, we will not be able to spend. And a curtailment of movement in itself would affect the consumption that we
So there's a balancing act here where we're saying that, we're feeding or fueling consumption in the hope that it will stimulate the economy. At the end of the day, by the way, we are borrowing to fuel that consumption, which is the concern that the minority raises. It looks like a very delicate balance we have to strike here.
A very delicate one, Gifty, in the sense that, and I said this morning, and I'll say it again. Now, how do we ensure we're able to do this without hitting debt and sustainability limits? Now, when the finance minister started speaking, he talked about our debt to GDP ratio was around 62%. You ask yourself, if we add all of these to it, what will be our debt to GDP ratio? And mind you, we're not going to be growing as we expected. And this is the challenge. Now, all over the years, one of the things we have done is that currently we're using our projected GDP growth to actually calculate our debt to GDP. And so if we are to revise it as has been revised, you would see that even without the additional borrowings, our debt to GDP ratio would be increasing. Can we sustain it if our primary balance hits the deficit? Can we sustain it? All right.
So a bit of a technicality there for you, but don't worry. We always break it down. But we need to get the understanding of that technical bit as well. But Winston, let me wrap up with you. I want you to tell me your thoughts on the extent to which this review addresses the problems that COVID-19 has created for us as an economy. I mean, how do you see it? Of course, we don't have a lot of details at the moment. If you talk about the Bantampa Fund, for example, like you're saying, we need to wait for its launch to see the details. Who is it? Where is it going to? How exactly is it going into the system for us to see the impact it will have on the problems created by COVID-19? But if you listen to all that we've said, the water, electricity, in fact, there's a trainee allowances that have been restored, 2 million, extension of free meals in schools. Of course, schools are on break at the moment. Monies that have been invested in Zongo development, etc. When you look at all of these put together, to what extent do you think they actually can address the problems that COVID-19 has created for us?
I was actually smiling at your question, but the mask is such that you won't see my smile.
Okay, we see it in your eyes.
But you see, the challenge of COVID-19 is that it's affected the disposable income of a lot of people. Government in itself has told all of us how its revenue targets have had to be reviewed. The finance minister has told us today that our revenue targets would see a reduction of 13.6 billion. And our expenditure is increasing also by 11.7 billion. What that tells you is that on the surface of it, things are not going on well.
Okay.
And government expenditure is what normally triggers the Ghanaian economy. Now, if I listen to all the things that the finance minister has said, one of the things I would say is that, one, there's been a reduction of the communication service tax. As much as we wouldn't see its impact, it wouldn't be so huge. When it was increased by 50% from 6 to 9%, we saw it because there had to be a change in telecommunication tariffs. So a reversal would also restore that. What that means is that the amount that you were spending earlier, you're not going to spend it. If government says we're going to be taking care of some people, we're going to be giving them some insurance packages, those who have lost their jobs, what it means is that those who could have become worse off and create a national security challenge for the country would be taking care of the government.
Hopefully.
You know, the economy, apart from the fact that it solves our bread and butter issues, also creates a security issue. When people do not have jobs, the next thing they might resort to is crime, because like I've always insisted, people certainly would want to eat. So that also would help solve some of those challenges. I do not know the details of the Obatampa program yet. I've seen...
Just a matter of time.
Just a matter of time. But if well implemented in the productive sectors of the economy, as the finance minister is promising us, then this is good for the economy.
Okay. I bring you to my final question, which is from the minority. The minority has described it as a manifesto or promises of manifesto. You've heard Ato Force and you've heard Mr. Adongo. They are saying that, look, this is really manifesto promises. Is that how you see it, manifesto promises? Well,
before we, the finance minister began the budget, I think I'd said to some people also that COVID-19, one of the good things politically, this question you asked is a political question. So,
it is.
So politically,
the political dynamics is
politically is that it gives government the leeway to make a lot more promises, bring about a lot of social interventions, which in a normal year you can't do it. And the finance minister starts by saying, one of the architects, the proponents of fiscal discipline, Angela Merkel, says, don't tell me about fiscal deficit now. And so that is what we have seen. Of course, he's talked about how you need strong men to continue building the economy. He's only taking advantage of it. You could call it a manifesto. I still see it as a budget.
Okay, we'll see how that goes. Winston, thank you very much. Winston Amwa is Deputy Head of our Political Desk. Let's take you right now to Parliament. Hi, Joseph.
Well, Gifty, as you rightly heard from the members on the minority side, they think this was virtually an empty budget review and policy statement from the finance minister. They think that it's pushing the economy possibly into the arena of a possible collapse. We heard from Isaac Adongo complaining about what he says is the ballooning debt stock that they think the finance minister is not taking care of. And Kesel Atoforsen, the former deputy finance minister, is worried that the nation is headed in the wrong arena financially. Let's get a quick reaction to that from a member on the Finance Committee of Parliament from the majority side. He is government spokesperson on finance, Daniel Ochimabwaji. Thanks very much for joining us. Your colleagues think the economy is virtually headed to a crash following what they've heard from the finance minister today. Your reaction?
Well, I totally disagree. Unfortunately, I think our colleagues don't have a lot of things to say. They don't have a message. So whatever they hear, they will say is going to collapse. Even under their watch, when the macroeconomic factors were not doing well, when the whole world is talking about the fact that they were doing reckless spending and reckless borrowing, the economy did collapse, so to say. We picked it up. The factors show that if you had the accounting that the minister gave, that from 2017 to 2019, we had actually done very well in terms of stabilizing the economy and easing the burden on Ghanaians and taking us out of IMF, stabilizing the power, and do what we have to do. On the tangent of growth, we are doing GDP averaging of about almost 7%, given that we took it from 3.4%. So what happened, unfortunately, even though we're in year of roads, is that the pandemic hit, COVID hit. At that point in time, you have to realign your expenditure to ensure that people have lives. You save lives. So it's not.
So for you, is this the best government could have done? Isaac Adongo makes the argument that if you are borrowing more than the economy will be able to generate in terms of the general expenditure, drawing the linkage and saying you are borrowing more than 56 billion cedis when the economy itself is generating something around 53 million cedis, then that's bad economic management. Your reaction?
Do you think that the investors will just dash you money? They will not do their homework? They will not assess ability to pay? What is he talking about? Yes, GDP is projected to be, debt to GDP, about 75%. If investors still believe in your economy, they will invest with you.
Is that sustainable? a debt-to-GDP ratio in that region of the 75%. Is there any economy in the world that's surviving under such scenarios? And actually
check America, it's over 100%. Go to Japan, it's over 250%. Look at other countries. That's not a measure of what actually investors do care is your ability to service the debt, right? And don't forget, this is not a Ghana issue. This is not a management issue. This is not a governance issue. This is a COVID issue, COVID-19 issue. The whole world is going through. Go and check America, what is happening. The deficit is over 16%. We happen, ours is going to be 11% older. So basically what you do is that the first thing, you do the first things first. You provide incentives to stimulate demand, and demand leads to employment, job creation, sustenance of the economy at this point in time. And that is what we have to do. While you do that, you continue to find money, wherever you can find them, to try to also begin to ensure that you take advantage. And I like the phrase that the minister used. Let's not waste the opportunity that this COVID-19 also provides. Yes, we hate the consequences of it. We don't like all the evil issues, but it is an opportunity also for us to be able to take advantage and bring people, for instance, into the tax net. He said something about provision of about 600 million reliefs to small and medium-scale businesses. But he added a word. So by providing, people have increased, and the number of people with 10 has increased from 100,000 to 800,000. What it means is that ultimately you will now begin to gradually provide help to these people, but in a way, get them also into the tax net so that, not that we're going to increase taxes, but the base increases. The smallest anybody pays or contribute to what we have to do.
My final question will be, so he's requesting for supplementary approval of money to the tune of 11 billion Ghana cedis. Yes. Should we be spending money we don't have in these times of difficult financial circumstances thanks to COVID-19? And that's the argument the minority is making, that the focus should be on cutting expenditure instead of probably borrowing to spend more, despite the COVID-19 pandemic.
Joe, in national income analysis, when the private sector investment is not forthcoming, when consumption, which is an injector, it injects revenue and money creation into the system, is not forthcoming from the private sector. Government expenditure is a stimulus. We need to stimulate demand. As government begins to say, let's provide help to private sector, let's spend on this and that, government expenditure ends up creating jobs. The jobs create income, and incomes are expended. People's disposable income will increase, and that will end up creating demand and supply and creating jobs.
Your colleagues are predicting a lot of this expenditure will go back to government cronies, and that everyday people would end up not benefiting. What's the assurance that all these additional expenses would actually generate real growth in the economy for the everyday person?
As for the things our friends will say, the least said about that, the better. What we need to look at is the fact that, Joe, you and I, in the first phase of the provision of electricity, we're enjoying. We got free water. Government provides 600 million cities to support small and medium scale. Now we know that 2 billion is going to be provided as guaranteed to help you and small businesses to take loans and expand the economy or keep the jobs. We know that there's a plan, medium to long term, of about 100 billion. 70-30, government providing 10%, private sector providing 70% to be able to stimulate the long-term economy of heading towards Ghana beyond aid. Let's look at that. Not what the opposition in their desperation are trying to say. They never believed anything was possible. They never believed in even free senior high school can be done in a year or two. They said 20 years was even impossible. They said even when Ghana first got oil, if you remember, they said it's impossible. What is needed right now is that life needs to be protected. Families needs to be supported. Employment needs to be kept created. Those who are going through unemployment need to be supported. When all these things are done and we have life, trust me, we'll be able to do more. And that's why they say in Account that, if you have life, you have everything. And that is a matter of choice. And that is clearly the difference between us and them. And they know. So I believe the minister has done very well. I believe the president needs to be applauded. I said this very humbly, and I believe that we should look at the facts, not just the distractions that our friends are trying to say, this is not possible, this is that, this is that. Will you sit down for a dog to bite you? when you have a stick by you? No, it doesn't make sense. And so we are using common sense, that's all the things we know, to make it happen. As for the President NDC, the better they stay, the longer they stay in opposition, the better for us.
Many thanks for joining us. That's government spokesperson on the economy. That's Daniel Achimabwachi, who is also the MP for Bantama and a member of the Finance Committee. So the debate has concluded here. The Finance Minister has left the premises. We've had reactions from the minority, Kesela Tofosin and Isaac Adongo, criticizing the review. What is expected next week is that for Monday, the real debate on it on the floor of the House will commence all the way through Tuesday, most likely into Wednesday, before the House eventually approves both the budget estimate and the supplementary approval, as has been requested by the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. Gifty, back to you.
Joseph, it's been a very long day. I won't belabor the points that have been made. There's been a lot of back and forth, most of which we expected anyway. I mean, in terms of the heckling and in terms of the responses based on political dynamics. So we'll leave it there. And I'm sure that we'll be getting more in our subsequent bulletins. But next week, there will be that debate, which we'll bring to our viewers. Joseph Opoku Gakpo is Parliamentary Affairs correspondent for us, joining us all the way from Parliament. We'll take a very quick break here on the pause. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, like many African countries, Ghana continues to grapple with an increase in the inequality gap, especially due to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, of course, which is why we're in Parliament talking about how to spend the money. About 2.4 million Ghanaians are classified as extremely poor. The government introduced the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty LEAP program in 2008 to support the country's poor and vulnerable. But sadly, those whom the program was intended to support have little or no idea about the program in many cases. Some of them who spoke to JoyNews' Agape Kwenu say they have never benefited from the program. Now, government today mentioned the LEAP program and the fact that there are some expansions, being introduced in there. But we'll be having a discussion on what government has done and the work that NGOs in development have also done. Take a look at Agape Kwenu's report on the LEAP program.
Meet 30-year-old Amidou Fasemche. He traveled from the western region to the capital, Accra, 3 years ago in search of greener pastures. But then reality hit him. The pastures in the capital is far from green. At night, he sleeps on the streets, and at day, he's a head porter. He tells me he earns a meager 10 cedi a day, helping passengers carry their baggage. That is far from enough to serve him one dinner, not to talk about 3 square meal and other costs such as transport, utilities, accommodation, and entertainment. And to make matters worse, the coronavirus pandemic has taken its toll on his business.
When I was young, my mother sent me to school. I could not continue about the school. That's why I ran away from home and I come to the streets. So right now I carry load before I get something to chop. Some people pay me at 10 cedis, some also give me 5 cedis. Some are wicked give me 2 cedis, but I took them all.
Amidou Fasemche is one of the about 2.4 million Ghanaians classified as extremely poor. He is supposed to benefit from the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty LEAP program introduced by the government in 2008 to support the poor and vulnerable in the country, but that is far from the case.
There's no place for us to stay, but we are living in Sky Filling Station. We got something called bunker in street, some place like Odona. The government come and destroy. They call themselves Abaye. They scattered all. As you know, in Ghana here, if you doesn't have certificate and don't have a good citizen, you can't get a job. As for me, I don't have cert. So only this guy I'll do.
Sadly, the LEAP program only extends to a few, leaving out an average of 1 million people. 25-year-old Sonia Banqua, a friend of Sonny, says he dropped out of school after the death of his grandmother, who was his only caretaker. He has been on the street since 2017. As a street boy, he says there are days he has to go to bed hungry as he barely earns enough to afford a 3 square meal.
I go to school, but I no go long.
I come hustle because I did my grandmother's side, but he dead. My mother and my father said them they Nigeria. We know they see them again. Sometimes I they get 30 cedis. If I get 30 cedis, I put 5 cedis in Susu Bank. By the time lockdown come now, everything go down, so I short money.
Amidu Fasemche is calling on government to pay attention to job creation and support of vulnerable groups in the country.
As the government is watching me there, as I was saying, I wanted to let him know that if you can look at the street, there are so many people out. We are suffering. We need help from government. As for me, I wanted to go home and go and start a new job for myself. But a lot of my friends here wanted to go and work with companies. So government can do that. We have to come and ask everybody who wants the job to do here and who wanted to go home. Government should do that for us so that they can help us and everything going on, the stealing and a lot of things going on out there. They can stop it.
Agape Queen's report for JoyNews.
This afternoon, you heard from the Finance Minister on government support for the vulnerable. They're actually saying that they're expanding the LEAP program to many more households. I'll give you the figure. But joining me via Zoom for this discussion is George Osei-Bimpe, Country Director for Send Ghana. They have been putting together a report from the SDG 10 sub-platform, and they've issued a statement on ways that we can mitigate the effect of COVID-19 on the poor and vulnerable. Mr. Bimpe, thank you for your time. Good afternoon. I think you're muted. Let's unmute and then we continue with the Zoom.
Okay. No, I think, can you hear me now?
I do perfectly. Okay, so I mean, just to give you the highlights, and I'm sure that you've already heard, there's going to be an unemployment insurance program, water and electricity, free water and electricity expanded, 3 months for water, 6 months for electricity. We were looking at 100 billion cedi investment, that's dubbed the Obatampa Fund. And there's a breakdown there as well. What are your own assessments of how this review, as we have heard it, addresses some of these key issues bordering on, our existence?
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, well-crafted statement, I should say, but the devil is, as they say, is in the detail. Unfortunately, the minister did not give a lot more details about the Obatampa program. I think basically that is because the president will be launching it, and so the president will be giving the details. So our fingers are crossed, and hopefully it will provide the necessary details that we need. But if lessons of existing and past social interventions are to go by, we are keen to learning about the kind of targeting mechanisms that will be rolled out so that we will reach, the program will reach these, the kind of people that you spoke to on the street. That will be very important. We are happy to also learn that LEAP is going to be expanded. And MFI, you and I have been talking on several occasions. One of the key advocacy messages that we have carried across has been the need to...
It looks like you went all dark on me all of a sudden. It looks like I might need a little bit of light in your background. I can't see your face.
I don't know. I think it's the wind. The wind is blowing my window.
Okay. So you're talking. Okay. You're talking about the how this manifests, essentially how this manifests on the ground and impacts on the lives of the people.
Yeah. So that is important. But you see, what is important for me is not the interventions that we put in place in the short term. The short term interventions could be a mere window dressing. The fundamental, the problem of inequality and poverty are systemic. And so when you are addressing inequality and poverty, you want to tackle the systemic underpinnings of inequality and poverty. So I would want to hear what goes beyond 6 months, 1 month. Those I'm saying I want to submit would only provide temporary relief, and it will not really address the problem that the extremely poor face. Though it may be good in the short term, because at the moment we are talking about a segment of our people who hitherto were not classified as extremely poor, but because of COVID and because of reduced economic activities, they have been forced into poverty, and for that matter, have been forced into the inequality bracket.
Yeah.
So temporary measure, but for me, what I would have wished to hear is, beyond even COVID, how do we as a country develop sustainable social protection programs that would eventually take out people from poverty? For the youth, for example, you do not want to rely on transitional jobs if you want to create sustainable jobs for them. So it may, the initiative is good, but only for the short term, if I may conclude on that.
Okay, right. So your platform put together a position paper on how we can mitigate the effect of COVID-19 on the poor and the vulnerable. For those who have not seen the document, it's indeed a little bit of a bulky document. I have it here. Those who have not seen it, give us the executive summary and what you want us to reflect on, to take home, essentially.
Well, 4 of them, if I may quickly go through them. The first one is that we expect that government would provide sufficient, spend sufficiently on universal quality public services. That kind of services will be the one that reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. Basically, we also want measures that will redistribute income or resources from the rich to the poor. We are talking about a situation where only 10% of Ghanaians consume approximately about 32 to 33% of consumption, whilst the 10 poorest consume just about 2% or 1.7 to be precise. So when we introduce income redistribution mechanisms that takes from the rich and give to the poor through progressive taxation, that is something that would address some of the systemic problems that we are talking about. The third one is to strengthen protection for labor rights and also enact policies for more for inclusive labor market. And the final one is basically to invest in national care systems. Basically, you are a woman, you are lucky you have education, but there are other women who may even have education but do home care. Unfortunately, those services that they provide at home are not quantified, and we do not recognize them as such. And what we are saying is that those that do home care must also receive the necessary, we should have policies that allow them to receive the necessary support. So even in the homes, the kind of, when they take care of children, when they cook, and so on and so forth, as a country, elsewhere, policies have been introduced to ensure that those people's activities are recognized. For that matter, we need to look at the possibility of replicating that in this country.
And having said that, you talk a lot about consumption and, taking from the rich to support the poor. It looks like, if you look at the review, it looks like government intends to do a lot of that, especially in a bit to stimulate the economy. So essentially, they have a huge amount of money that's reserved for that purpose. For instance, they're expanding the LEAD program to a lot more households. I've got like 334,084 households they're looking at. They are expanding the school feeding program, for example. Are these interventions not enough?
They are very good interventions, and you must commend them. But you see, they are not new. We are only scaling up. When we talk about taking from the poor to give to the rich, we are talking about the introduction of a tax regime that is progressive enough. If we succeed in implementing all these proposals or programs, but we do not create a situation where the rich pay more, proportionate to their size of income, we will end up, of course, providing social protection services, but we won't be able to bridge the gap. We might not necessarily succeed as a country to have a situation where we all have the equal level of income. But what we are trying to say is that in this country, many companies, many rich people, unfortunately, do not pay what is due to the state. And we would wish that in as much as government is scaling up on those social protection interventions, we should look at the level of progressivity of our tax regime so that we can take more from the rich and give to the poor. So basically, point we are making is that if we do not introduce policies that address the systemic underpinnings of poverty and inequality, we will not succeed. And it doesn't appear to me that those issues have been tackled on, but these are temporary, to me, more of temporary measures, especially when we are talking about just 1 month or 6 months. We should be talking about taking people out of poverty from from now, from in the short and the medium term, and even in the long term. That is when we can only talk. That's the point that we can begin to talk about equitable and inclusive development.
I get you. It makes a lot of sense. But I'm sure that as the days progress, we'll be able to, get the details of what government has said and make those analysis, and hopefully that helps, Mr. Bimpe. But just before you go, the alleviation fund. You mentioned the details. We don't have a lot of details, but I just wanted to read a few of the ones that I have here for you before I let you go. Their focus is ensuring food security. There's to protecting businesses and workers, strengthening the health system, attracting private investment, and supporting Ghanaian businesses. Those are the big, sub-headlines beneath it. So I just wanted to let you have that. But thank you very much. Hopefully next week we'll get in touch with you. Osebin Pele, he's the country director of Sent Ghana. Thank you once again. Now away from the budget review, President Akufo-Addo has directed Communications Minister Eslo Owusu-Akufo to suspend her directive for the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation to reduce its channels from 6 to 3. The National Media Commission earlier said the move by the Communications Minister amounted to government control of the media. Here is a news desk report looking at the story so far.
President Akufo-Addo has directed the Communications Minister to suspend the DTT directive given to the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, GBC. In a press release Thursday, the Director of Communications at the Office of the President, Eugene Ahin, said the directive is in connection with the reduction of GBC's channels on the DTT platform, pending further consultations with stakeholders. The National Media Commission earlier said the move by the Communications Minister amounts to government control of the media, but she had justified it, explaining there wasn't enough space on the platform.
This is not a new occurrence, but we're faced with a pandemic, which makes it difficult for us to even complete the switchover process because of the cost implications on broadcasters. So the discussions are, what do we do to free up excess capacity? Right now, if the state has need of broadcasting urgent communication to the public, it does not have any means of doing so. If national security has need of broadcasting urgent communication to the state, to the citizens, it has no means of doing so. It is critical for us at this juncture to be faced with a process in which the only platform for broadcasting to the populace, the capacity on it, is completely used up. And so it just makes sense, without reading any ulterior motives into it, to work to create additional capacity on it in the event that that capacity is needed.
In a letter Wednesday, the National Media Commission, NMC, said moves by the Communications Ministry to reduce 3 of the 6 channels of the state's broadcaster and Crystal TV on the platform is outside the ministry's remit. Yaobwedu Ayeboafo, chairman of the NMC, said the ministry is usurping its powers. According to the Commission, the Constitution mandates it to promote and ensure freedom and independence of the media for mass communication or information, and also insulate the state-owned media from governmental control. Mr. Bwedu Ayeboafo said any developments that seeks to deprive the media of its use of resources legally allocated to them compromises their capacity to serve the country.
As a news desk report there, let's get on Zoom for some reaction. I have NDC MP for Ningo Pram Pram, Sam Jata George. Mr. George, good afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Gifty, and good afternoon to your listeners and viewers.
Right. Were you in Parliament? It doesn't look like you were.
I was. I just left
you
Parliament.
were. Oh, right. So what are your thoughts briefly? You also think this is a manifesto, I guess?
A lot of political promises. Very, very, very heavy on promises and very little on direct interventions that will affect the Ghanaian people over the next 6 months.
Let me bring you to the reason why we've called you for this particular conversation, which is that President Akufo-Addo has issued a directive essentially over that of the communications minister's quest for the GBC to, free up space by getting off 3 of their 6 channels. What do you make of that?
Well, this is not President Akufo-Addo's directive. President Akufo-Addo is only trying to ride on the back of the directive that was given by the National Media Commission. President Akufo-Addo heard about this and knew about this since it broke in the media for almost 2 weeks. He failed to take action. Yesterday, the National Media Commission ruled on the matter. The president's letter is moot. It's political chicanery. It's political football. It's of no consequence. Because when the president should have acted, he failed to act. This is a decision of the National Media Commission. And it upholds the position that I and the minority have held on this matter, that the minister acted unconstitutionally. Article 1624 of the Constitution was clear. The minister was very verbose in her defense of it. We've been vindicated that the minister's actions amounted to an editorial policy or interfering in the editorial policy of the GBC. She had no mandate to take away the stations from GBC or issue the direct that she gave. I'm happy that the NMC is doing its job and that the ministry would have to comply with the directive by the NMC.
You say that you've been vindicated, but what the letter, let me start with the fact that it's always better late than never. When the president, adds his voice to something, of course, there's a bit of weight that comes with it irrespective. And so it's better late than never, wouldn't you say?
Gifty, the president's voice in this matter is moot. He doesn't have a voice. The president's voice should have come as soon as his minister's actions came to his knowledge. The president coming to speak after the NMC had spoke is like administering medication to a dead body. It has no effect. You can inject all the antibiotics you want into a dead body. It won't do anything. The president should have spoken and called his minister to order when the matter broke. After the NMC had spoken, once the NMC had spoken, there was nothing the minister could do. And you see, if you read the tone of the president's letter and the NMC's position, the president's letter is untenable. The president says the minister should suspend. The NMC says she does not have the power. So whether it is suspended or not suspended, she cannot come back to it after the election, which is what the president's letter suggests. That for political reasons, he wants to let this go quiet, and after the elections, they want to bring it back. It would not wash.
Is that how you see it? You see this, the president's letter as a move to just suspend it, pre-election and bring it back post-election?
I am not saying that. I'm sure you've read the president's letter.
I can read it for you here. It's here. Okay.
Yes, he uses the word suspend, so please read it.
Yes.
Read the letter.
So it says, the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, on Thursday, 23rd July, directed the Minister for Communication to, and I'm skipping a few, to suspend the implementation of the directives given to the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation in connection with the reduction of GBC's channels on the DTT, pending further consultation with stakeholders. That's how it
doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything. The NMC was categoric. The minister does not have the power to issue those directives. The president is saying she should suspend the directives. It tells you that the president himself doesn't even understand what it is that is being said. So that's why I'm saying that you cannot seek to give credit to the president in an issue where, first and foremost, he should have acted at the time he should have acted. He did not act. The constitutionally mandated body has taken action, definitive action, and he is engaged in speculation.
Looks like I've just lost some George there, but I think that he's made his point, and it's quite clear. That Zoom gets like that sometimes. So he's saying that, well, it doesn't change anything. President's letter doesn't add anything to the conversation. The NMC has already issued their ruling on it, and that's it. He says the minority and their cause, or the minority has been vindicated. their cause substantiated, of course. All right, so I'll move on to our next headline story. A second-year student of Ejisu Secondary Technical Senior High School has been hospitalized after drinking liquid soap in what is believed to be an attempted suicide on campus. This was after an assistant headmaster locked him up with a colleague overnight in his office for stealing the school's electric stabilizer. Shouts by the colleague from inside the office attracted attention of staff and students who found the victim foaming from the mouth. Love FM's Erastus Saridonko has been following the story. Here is his report.
According to school authorities, a taxi driver spotted the two students in the evening yesterday trying to scale over the school wall with a hidden item. He arrested and handed them over to the assistant headmaster, who retrieved the stolen stabilizer. Assistant headmaster Kofi Apia told Love News he asked the students to strip naked to their underwear and lock them up in his office until the next day.
So I was trying to inquire from them where they got it, and they were not trying to tell me the truth. And it was late in the night. School management, the teachers weren't around, headmaster too wasn't around, and I didn't want to take any decision outside them. So I decided to keep them in my office so that the following morning, that is today, when the head comes and then the other management members also come, then we sit on the issue and then we trash it out. Unfortunately, there was this liquid soap there that they used to clean the office. I don't know what happened, and then one of the students took it. And I don't know whether he drank it or whatever. So they called me in the morning and said that he has drunk some of the, what do you call the liquid soap. So quickly we came, and then he was there on the ground. And then we took him to the hospital. And then later on the headmistress came, and then reported the case to the commander, the BNI first, and then the police commander also came in. So right now the other guy, they have taken the other guy to the police, and this one too is at the hospital, and so that is the issue now.
Is it true they were stripped to their boxer as they speak?
Oh, yeah, and I just, they were wearing some white shirts, and then I said you should take the white shirt off. And they were wearing the boxer all right. But you see, the police, I can take you there, is very nice police. The fan was there, the light was there, everything was there. Everything clean.
So were they locked inside the office for the whole night?
My own office, yes. I locked them in my own office, just for the headmistress to come the following day and the other management members to come, so that we can trash out the issue.
My worry was that anything could have happened in the night. Why she left them there? Anything at all could have happened.
I told them that definitely they will urinate. So before that, I asked them to urinate, so that they won't go and then maybe have that problem over there.
One of them drank a liquid hand-washing soap he found in the office. His colleague in the morning shouted for help to draw the attention of other teachers on campus, who rushed him to the Ejisu Government Hospital. We are told by health officials he is responding to treatment, but we were not allowed to speak with him directly. But his mom has been telling us what actually happened.
Assistant headmaster ne bonasu sana akura ne kachire me senka akwala no boni be na odi ya mutumi loko no e wo dem mutumi loko no wo dem nti ade na wonum ye no wonum ye na wo wu ya na isa akwala no ade chinye wo wu.
Reporting for JoyNews, Erastus Asaridonko, Kumasi.
I'm going to Kumasi. Erastus Asaridonko is connecting with me to give us an update on that story. Hi, Erastus. Erastus, what's the latest?
Hi, Gifty.
Right, what's the latest development on this attempted suicide or alleged attempted suicide story?
Well, so we call it attempted suicide for now. The student is still on admission, but he's responding to treatment. Currently, he's going through psychiatric evaluation to ensure that he's in the right frame of mind and also to understand his actions, I'm told, by health professionals. I'm also nosing around the corridors of the Ghana Education Service. I know that as we speak, the Regional Director of Education has been briefed, and they are preparing a report to the Director General of the GES. As of now, as at the time we came on air, they have not taken any decision regarding the assistant headmaster or the headmistress of that particular school. So it's early days yet, but we're still monitoring on what action, immediate action, the regional director will take on that.
Right, Erastus, you did speak with the mother, and I think the gentleman that's supposed to be the father as well. They're not particularly happy with the way that the school handled it. Has the head teacher of the school himself or herself spoken to us?
Well, I spoke with her at her office. She would not go on record immediately with us because she claims she has not notified the Director General of the Ghana Education Service and her immediate boss, who is the Municipal Director of Education for Ejiso and the Regional Director of Education. But she said she does not support what the Assistant Headmaster did, the action that he took, because she was not on campus. She wasn't there, she wasn't briefed, and she came to learn of it in the morning of the action that her assistant has taken, and that it wasn't in the best interest of the school. But as of now, we are yet to see what action will be taken against this assistant headmaster. Finally,
Rastos, I'd like to bring you back to the KNUST SHS incident where that young man died. We understand there's a development on that story as well.
Yes, today he was laid to rest. I'm referring to Sam Leonard Richards. He was 17, and his colleagues from the KNUST Senior High School came to pay their last respects to him. In fact, it was a solemn moment. The mother is distraught, and at the point where the student had to leave, you could see she got up from her seat and exchanged greetings individually with the students. And I learned these are students who were very close to him. They described him as a very brilliant, caring, supportive student who solves their mathematical questions for them. And so it was quite a sad moment for them today as the regional director, the various teacher unions, families, friends, sympathizers all across Kumasi came to mourn with the family.
Very sad one there, but may his soul rest in peace. Erastus, thank you. I'm sure that in the coming weeks we'll know what the committee is doing with those who are being questioned at the moment. Erastus Asaridonko, their correspondent in the Ashanti region. Before we go, JoyNews can confirm that 2 students of the Anlo Senior High School have been reported dead after they were taken ill. Sources in the school indicate that the boy asked for an exit because he was not feeling well, but he died upon reaching the hospital. More of that story later on. There's more news at myjoyonline.com if you do log on, and we have our YouTube link as well. You can get all of our videos from there. Do follow our programs. My name is Gifty Ando Apia. Thank you so much.